a glorious sight. Oh, the nation.
Israel and Hezbollah that we've seen over the last 7 weeks, and gradually over the last 7 weeks, the intensity and the nature of the shelling, especially around built-up civilian areas, has increased. About 40,000 civilians have had to leave their homes on the Lebanese side, of course thousands as well on the Israeli side, and there are communities right up against this border. And I think once the fighting is likely to resume in and around Gaza, I think we'll see a very similar pattern developing in the north as well.
And as you describe, Wira, as well, you know, Hezbollah are politically and militarily powerful in Lebanon, but that country is in the grip of an economic crisis. And we've heard from other political elements, and, you know, as you say, I've been following your reporting in southern Lebanon. For people you speak to there as well, there's not a great deal of public appetite for a war with Israel right now, is there?
No, Lebanon's in the depth of a dire economic crisis. There's certainly no public support for going to war here. They're aware of what has happened before when, you know, the war between Israel and Hezbollah has been brought almost to the streets of Beirut. And clearly, after what this country has gone through in recent years, there is no appetite for war. Having said that, there are, you know, hundreds of thousands of Palestinian refugees and their descendants living here in Lebanon, and they fully support, many of them, what is happening in Gaza. They're certainly aware and are desperately concerned about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Also, Hezbollah is a very close ally of Hamas. Hamas have officials and offices here in Lebanon. There was a very high-profile Iranian delegation. The Iranian foreign minister was in Lebanon this week, expressing Iran's support, obviously, for Hezbollah and for Hamas. But any public pronouncements from Hezbollah yet have not said they're going to fully join in the fight, but neither have they said they're going to adhere to this cessation of hostilities in and around Gaza. So we're in touch with the UN. We're actively monitoring the situation on the border because, as I said, there is no guarantee that the cessation of hostilities in and around Gaza will be replicated in the fighting between Hezbollah and Israel around that fragile border.
Thank you, Wira. Wira Davis there, our correspondent in Lebanon, in the heart of Beirut, on the situation on the border there. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News. Welcoming to viewers on BBC One. I'm Anna Foster. You're joining us here live in southern Israel, just a few hours after a ceasefire deal took place on a crucial day in this war. You can see there live pictures of the skyline of Gaza at the moment. Now, even before the ceasefire took place this morning, in the last hour before it took hold, there was still a lot of fighting that we could hear. I was seeing and hearing airstrikes, plumes of smoke rising into the sky, the sound of mortars and small arms fire. But that ceasefire seems to have bedded in and is holding well at the moment. And that is why we have also started to see now the movement of humanitarian aid from Egypt into Gaza. We've seen trucks started to move through the Rafah crossing. You can see there live pictures of that much needed aid starting to move through. And this is all hopefully moving towards a hostage deal later in the day, where Israeli hostages who've been held in Gaza will be released and returned to their families.
Anna Foster for us there.
You're
Thanks very much,
BBC
Anna Foster
News.
for
We're going
us
to keep
there.
you up to date with this developing story through the day.
Thanks very much, Anna Foster, for us there in southern Israel. We'll be back with her shortly. Let's turn our attention to some other news now. The former South African Paralympic sprinter Oscar Pistorius will find out today if he'll be granted early release from his prison sentence for murdering his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp. Pistorius, who was known by the nickname the Blade Runner, shot and killed Riva on Valentine's Day in 2013. He was originally jailed for 5 years, but that sentence was eventually increased to more than 13 9 years. He was turned down for parole last March after the board ruled he had not yet completed the minimum amount of time in detention to be considered for release. Let's go live now to our correspondent Daniel de Simone, who's at Atteridgeville Prison, where Oscar Pistorius is being held. And there's been a witness statement, or a victim impact statement, I suppose, from June Steenkamp, Reva's mother, hasn't there? Can you talk us through what's been said in it?
That's right. That was just read out a bit earlier by a family friend called Rob Matthews, whose own daughter was murdered. He read it out to us here, to the media, and then he is going inside the prison just over there to read it to the parole board. June Steenkamp isn't formally opposing parole for Oscar Pistorius, but the statement that we had read to us made clear that she is not convinced that he is rehabilitated, and that she has concerns for the safety of women if his behaviour has not been addressed in prison. She said that she does not believe his version of events about the night his daughter was killed. She says she doesn't know anyone that does believe it, and she set out evidence which she says shows that he had serious anger issues, including towards her daughter. That statement's going to be read out to the parole board in the hearing. The hearing got underway a bit earlier, and we were advised that the hearing will probably run until around lunchtime here in South Africa. There may be a decision today. The decision could also be delayed into next week. I think a decision will come today if the parole board are agreed on their position, if there's a common position. If they decide to release Oscar Pistorius on parole, they would then have a 30-day period in which to do so. So there's some people who are talking about him perhaps walking out today. That is far from clear that would happen, even if he were to receive parole today.
OK, thank you very much. Daniel de Simone there, thank you. A clean-up operation is taking place in Dublin after a night of rioting which saw police officers attacked, shops looted and vehicles burned. Police are blaming far-right demonstrators for the violence, which began after a woman and 3 children were stabbed outside a school in the city. Our Ireland correspondent Sarah Gervin is in Dublin for us, and we've been hearing from the police commissioner in the last hour or so, Sarah, talking about how there have been 34 arrests and really facing quite a lot of questions from the media about the police handling of events last night.
Yeah, there were a lot of questions. Andrew Harris, the Garda Commissioner, the head of the police here in Ireland, gave us a lot more detail about what happened last night. Let me run through some of it with you. What he described as a riotous mob, he said, tried to break in and disrupt the crime scene following the stabbing that took place just on the road behind me. You can see it is still cordoned off. There is still a police presence here. He said that mob was driven by right-wing ideology. Yesterday he called them a lunatic hooligan faction. Today he described them as thugs, looters and arsonists, rioters filled with hate, he said. He had very, very strong words. He described last night's scenes as terrible and said there was huge destruction. 34 arrests, he says 32 people are due in court this morning as a result of those. He gave us some more figures as well, Lucy. 13 shops significantly damaged or looted in that rioting and violence last night. 11 Garda vehicles destroyed, 3 buses and a tram destroyed too. Interestingly, he was asked if he was maybe expecting to see any more trouble today or how police were planning for that, and he said there was a planned assumption given yesterday that there would be further protests and that police were preparing for that. But he did also concede that there needs to be a bit of an overhaul in public order, how the Garda deal with those kind of things when riots that went on last night. Now, he also did give us an update on the people who were injured in the stabbing last night. He says that a 5-year-old girl is still in a serious condition, as is a woman in her 30s. He said that that was the girl's teacher. We know that a 5-year-old boy who was injured in the stabbing last night, he was released from hospital yesterday. A 6-year-old girl is still being treated for her injuries as well. He did say that no arrest has been made, but a suspect has been identified. In terms of police, how they were hurt, he said one officer was seriously injured, and he described it as an exhausting night for police officers. So that press conference was just held an hour ago in a different part of Dublin at Garda headquarters. Lots of information about last night and lots more to come throughout today, I would imagine.
Was there something about one police officer being injured as well?
Yeah, we were actually here last night and now I'm not sure it was the same officer, I am assuming it was. We saw an officer who'd been injured who was actually being helped from back down that road towards the cordon again by his colleagues. The Commissioner, Drew Harris, did say he's going to check in with that officer today and make sure that they're doing okay. He did also say yesterday that officers had been attacked and assaulted, but no one was seriously injured. But today we had that update that there is one officer who was hurt. We know that overnight there was around 400 Garda officers in and around the city centre keeping calm. There's still some holding a cordon here. And actually, when we were on earlier, a member of the public actually went up to the officers and thanked them for their work last night. So we do expect more of an update later on about the condition of that officer, but Drew Harris confirming today that one officer has been seriously injured.
Yeah, they also talked about how many hours of CCTV they're having to trawl through, aren't they, and how there may be further arrests to follow.
Yeah, and you would imagine there will be more than those 34, because when this violence began, it really did sprawl throughout the city. We saw that lots of shop windows had been smashed in. We saw items being looted from those stores. And as you say, police will now have hours to trawl through to try to identify those people. Lots of them we saw were wearing masks yesterday, but the police will be looking at CCTV nonetheless and trying to make more arrests in the coming days.
OK, thank you very much. Sarah Gervin reporting.
You're returning to BBC Breakfast. Apologies, we had an evacuation in the building, but we are back now with you to keep you up to date with the latest in the news.
So the latest news from the Middle East this morning. We know that a temporary ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has begun. It started 4 hours ago.